Here's something deeply uncomfortable. The most capable person in the room is usually the quietest one, not because they have nothing to say, but because they're too busy questioning whether they're qualified to say it. Meanwhile, the person who just Googled the topic this morning is already 3 sentences into their confident, loud, completely wrong answer. And somehow, the room believes them. If you've ever held back an idea because you weren't sure enough, if you've ever watched someone less qualified get the promotion, the credit, the platform, if you've ever felt like a fraud despite a track record that proves otherwise, this video is a psychological autopsy of why that happens. And I'm going to warn you right now, some of what I'm about to tell you is going to sting. Because this isn't about building you up. It's about showing you the exact mechanism that's been quietly working against you, and what you can do to dismantle it. If this kind of content interests you, subscribe. No pressure. Just know there's more where this came from. Let's talk about what's actually at stake here. Because this isn't just a self-esteem problem. It has real-world consequences. Smart, qualified people hesitate. Unqualified, overconfident people act. And institutions, organizations, social systems, they reward the action, not the accuracy. This is how mediocrity gets promoted. This is how the loudest, least self-aware person in the room ends up running the meeting, running the company, running the country. And the cost isn't just personal. When perception consistently overrides competence, entire systems make worse decisions. Teams take bad advice from the wrong voices. Talent gets buried under performance. But here's what no one tells you about the smart person who stays quiet. Their silence isn't humility. It's a trap. And understanding how they got into that trap, that's where everything changes. In 1999, 2 psychologists named David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger ran a series of experiments at Cornell University. What they found was disturbing. People who performed the worst on a test, logic, grammar, humor, didn't just fail. They also dramatically overestimated how well they'd done. They had no idea they were bad at it. And here's the dark part. The reason they were bad at it was the same reason they couldn't see it. They lacked the skill to recognize their own incompetence. Now flip that. The people who performed the best, they consistently underestimated their scores. They assumed the test was easy. They assumed everyone else probably did just as well. So we have 2 groups. Group A, low skill, high confidence. Group B, high skill, lower confidence. Which one do you think gets mistaken for competent in a job interview? In a meeting? On a first impression? Right. Now here's the paradox that nobody sits with long enough. The very thing that makes you smart, the ability to analyze your own thinking, is the exact same thing that makes you feel inadequate. This is not a personality flaw. It's not anxiety. It's not imposter syndrome in the pop psychology sense. It's metacognition. And it's a double-edged blade. Smart people have a heightened ability to audit their own knowledge, to notice gaps, to question conclusions before they share them. That's the same ability that makes them rigorous, accurate, and genuinely useful. But it's also the same ability that whispers, "You're not ready. You don't know enough. What if you're wrong?" And while that whisper is running in the background, someone else with far less awareness and far more certainty is already moving. Let me walk you through the actual psychological terrain here. Imagine a graph. Competence on the x-axis, confidence on the y-axis. The line it draws is not what you'd expect. It doesn't go up steadily. It spikes, crashes, recovers, and then levels out. And each point on that line represents a completely different psychological state. Stage 1. Someone learns a little about a subject. Just enough to feel oriented. And almost immediately, confidence explodes. They feel like they've cracked it. They're talking about it at dinner. They're correcting people online. They've watched 2 YouTube videos and they think they understand the system. Researchers call this the peak of Mount Stupid. And the reason confidence is so high here isn't intelligence. It's the absence of awareness. You don't know what you don't know. So the territory feels manageable, small, conquered. This is where most of the loudest voices live. The guy in the comments who has an opinion on geopolitics after reading 1 article. The new employee who questions the entire department process on day 3. They're not malicious, they're just early. Stage 2, Things get darker. As knowledge deepens, something shifts. You start finding the contradictions, the edge cases, the things that don't fit neatly. You realize the topic has layers you didn't even know existed. Confidence collapses. This is the valley of despair. And here's the brutal irony. This is where most highly intelligent people live, not temporarily, permanently, because the more they learn, the more layers they find. The valley doesn't end for them. It keeps revealing new depth. Picture a med student in their third year. They know enough to understand how much they still don't know. They second-guess every clinical instinct. They hesitate. Meanwhile, a first-year student volunteers answers with zero hesitation because they haven't learned enough to know the question is complicated. Who do patients trust on first impression? More often than not, the one who seems certain. Stage 3. For those who push through, competence catches up with calibration. This is the slope of enlightenment. Confidence rebuilds, but it's a different kind of confidence now. It's quieter. It has edges. It knows what it can and cannot say. Stage 4. The plateau. True expertise. Someone who can say, in this specific domain, I'm confident. In this adjacent area, I'd want to learn more. That's not weakness. That's precision. But most smart people never reach the plateau. Not because they stop learning, because the valley is psychologically brutal, and without the right framework they stay stuck there. Watching from below as less informed, more confident people move past them. And that's where the dark psychology really begins. Let's talk about something most self-help content won't touch. Overconfidence is a social weapon. When someone speaks with unshakable certainty, even when they're wrong, the people around them feel something. Stability, direction, safety. The brain is wired to follow decisive signals. It's an evolutionary shortcut. In uncertain environments, confidence was a proxy for competence. That wiring still runs in us today. So when an underqualified person walks into a room and performs certainty, they don't just avoid scrutiny, they attract trust, authority, opportunity. And they've learned this, consciously or not. Some people discover early in life that projecting confidence opens doors, so they keep doing it. Not because they're deceptive, although sometimes they are, but because it works. The social reward system doesn't check your credentials, it responds to your signal. And the calibrated, self-aware person, they send a weaker signal. Not because they know less, because they refuse to overclaim. They qualify their statements. They add nuance. They hesitate where others don't. To an untrained observer, that reads as uncertainty. And in a world that moves fast and pays attention to surfaces, uncertainty gets penalized. Here's what makes this dark. It means the people most likely to be honest about their limitations are also the most likely to be underestimated. And the people most likely to overstate their competence are the ones who get handed the platform. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a system operating exactly as designed. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. But the answer isn't to become what you despise. The answer is something more precise. But that's not the real reason smart people stay stuck. Because the social dynamics are only half the story. There are psychological mechanisms running underneath, and they're doing serious damage. 4 mechanisms, each one compounding the last. First, metacognitive sensitivity. The more intelligent you are, the better you are at identifying what you don't know. This is valuable, it makes you honest. But in high-stakes moments, it becomes a liability. While others speak, you're still auditing. While others act, you're still reviewing. The awareness that makes you accurate also makes you slow. And in environments that reward speed, you lose ground. Second, the curse of knowledge. Once you've deeply learned something, you forget what it was like not to know it. Your expertise starts to feel obvious, basic. You start to assume that anyone who spent time on this topic knows what you know. You dismiss your own understanding as unremarkable, not realizing that what feels like common sense to you is genuinely advanced to most people. The result, you stop valuing what you know right at the moment when you should be leveraging it. Third, toxic comparison. Smart people don't benchmark themselves against average performers. They benchmark themselves against the best in the field. The doctoral candidate doesn't compare themselves to an undergraduate. They compare themselves to the tenured professor who spent 30 years on this single topic. That's not ambition. At a certain point, that's self-destruction. When your reference point is genius, you will always feel like a failure. And the higher your standards, the more painful that gap becomes. This isn't a sign of excellence. It's a cognitive distortion dressed up as aspiration. Fourth, familiarity bias. You have complete access to your own doubt. Every insecurity, every mistake, every middle-of-the-night spiral, you experience all of it in full detail. But when you look at other people, you see the edited version, the confident presentation, the polished post, the clean answer they gave in the meeting. You compare your raw footage to their highlight reel, and then you wonder why you feel behind. This is the trap. 4 mechanisms, all pulling in the same direction, toward hesitation, toward contraction, toward staying quiet. And none of it reflects your actual ability. But knowing the trap isn't enough, because the trap has teeth. When it's left unchecked, it doesn't just cause discomfort. It starts destroying outcomes. Let's get precise. If you're a high-functioning person who chronically underestimates yourself, here's a 7-step protocol to recalibrate. Not to feel better, to see yourself accurately. Step 1. Build a competence log. This is a factual record of evidence. Projects completed, feedback received, problems you've solved, skills you've built, not impressions, data. When doubt arrives, you don't fight it with emotion, you show it the receipts. Most smart people never do this, because their achievements feel unremarkable to them. That feeling is the bias. The log corrects it. Step 2. Demand specific external calibration, not vague reassurance. Ask someone who knows your work, where would you rank my skill level in this area? What specifically do I do well? Vague compliments don't move the needle. Specific external data does. It gives you a reference point that exists outside your own distorted self-perception. Step 3. Confidence forecasting. Before a task, estimate your probability of success on a scale of 1 to 10. After completing it, record what actually happened. Run this experiment repeatedly over weeks. What you'll find is a consistent pattern. You underestimate. Your forecast is almost always more pessimistic than your outcome. That pattern is information. Use it to adjust your internal compass. Step 4. Reset your comparison benchmark. Stop measuring yourself against the top fraction of a percent. Start measuring yourself against the average practitioner in your field. Not to lower your standards, but to recalibrate your self-perception. If you're above average, your doubt is working on false premises. That matters. Step 5. Output practice. Teach what you know. Write it. Explain it to someone newer than you. The moment you start articulating your knowledge to someone starting out, something shifts. What felt obvious to you stops feeling obvious. You realize how much ground you've actually covered. Teaching doesn't just help them. It reveals you to yourself. Step 6. Embodied behavior. Confidence is not just a mental state. It's a physical signal to others and to yourself. Speak at a measured pace. Use direct language. Stop overqualifying every sentence you say. The body changes the mind. When your behavior reflects competence, your perception of yourself starts to follow. Step 7. Define good enough before you start. Perfectionists don't finish things. They refine them into invisibility. Before any project, set a specific, achievable standard. When you meet it, stop, ship it, act on it. Perfection is not a destination. It's a procrastination strategy with good PR. This protocol doesn't erase doubt. It puts doubt in the right role. Advisor, not warden. Now, a brief but necessary stop. There is a version of self-doubt that is healthy, normal, a sign of accurate self-awareness. And then there is a version that has crossed a line, and that line matters. When doubt causes you to regularly decline opportunities you're qualified for, that's avoidance. When every decision triggers an exhausting loop of worst-case scenarios, that's paralysis, not analysis. When your anxiety before performing is physical, consistent, and debilitating, that's not nerves. That's a nervous system stuck in threat mode. And when you achieve things repeatedly, and you still feel fraudulent, still feel exposed, still believe the success belongs to luck or circumstance, and that feeling never fades, that's not metacognition anymore. That's a distorted lens through which you're filtering every outcome. Left unchecked, this progresses. The doubt stops being about specific tasks and starts being about your fundamental worth. That's depression territory. And at that point, no framework or protocol is a substitute for professional support. Cognitive behavioral therapy in particular is effective here, not because it eliminates uncertainty, but because it helps you identify when your internal narrative has broken from reality. Therapy isn't crisis management. It's calibration at a deeper level. Even high-performing professionals use it, not because they're broken, but because they're serious about accuracy. If any of what I described in that paragraph resonated, please take that seriously. Your intelligence is not a substitute for care. Here's where we land. You don't need less doubt. You need control over it. Doubt is not the enemy. Unexamined doubt is. Doubt that runs unchecked, that masquerades as humility, that keeps qualified people small while the unaware move forward. That's the problem. The goal was never to become the loudest person in the room. The goal is to stop letting your awareness become a cage. There's a version of confidence that doesn't require you to lie to yourself, that doesn't require you to perform certainty you don't feel. It's built from evidence, from tracking your outcomes, from testing your internal narrative against reality, from doing the work and then actually acknowledging that you did it. That kind of confidence is quiet, it's grounded. It doesn't need to announce itself, and it's available to you not when the doubt disappears, but when you stop waiting for it to. Start the log, ask for specific feedback, make the forecast, set the standard, output the knowledge, let your behavior lead. Your doubt is not proof that you don't belong. It's proof that your mind is paying attention. The question is whether you're going to keep letting it run the operation, or whether you're going to step in and take the controls. If this shifted something for you, let me know in the comments. Specifically, which part hit the hardest? I read them. And if you want to go deeper on the psychology behind perception, confidence, and how the mind distorts reality, the next video is already queued up. It's worth your time.